Did you know rock bottom has a basement? Listen to the recovery story of Minola, one of the most inspiring change enthusiasts that I am blessed to know on this planet.
Hi, Zara, and hello, everyone. It's such a joy to be here. I'm a journalist by trade. I'm a change practitioner by choice. I am also a serial immigrant. So, originally, I'm from Romania. I come from a mixed family. I'm half Romanian, half Hungarian.
Minola wrote an incredible book about change and how one can observe change in everyday moments. It's called Everyday Inspiration for Change. One of the most powerful quotes I found in the book is show your scars so that others know they can heal. Let's hear what was the spark behind it.
This show your scars so that others know that they can heal is about showing up with all your experiences and showing up with your stories, because I believe that behind every scar is a story. Maybe the magic there happens when we move from telling a story of wounding into telling a story of healing.
I give kudos to Minola for her vulnerability and braveness to share her story to shine light for those in their storm today.
2 years back, the universe so organized it that I was going through a storm professionally. I was going through a storm personally. I left corporate consulting. I was in another country. I lost my grandfather, and that was one of the deepest connections in the family. I lost my cat of 15 years, and I know that sounds trivial to some people, but it was just yet another drop in an already full glass. I was going through a breakup that was quite tough and unexpected. So everything happened all at once.
Minola then continues to share how she tried herself to bring some light in the storm. And what was the question that hit her like a ton of bricks?
I don't know why, I just felt this calling, reaching out to people who knew me in my early 20s when I was young and I thought I could change the world. And I wanted to be reminded of how I was back then. The other one, I said I have no control over almost anything and I have to make peace with it. So I found three things that I had control over. And I promised myself that no matter what happens, every single morning, I will wake up, make coffee, take a shower, and make my bed. And if nothing else happens on that day, that will still be a good day. And another thing that happened, a friend of mine back then was starting his career coaching business. He asked me to have a look at his customer onboarding questionnaire. There was a question comprised of two sub questions that really made me pause. And those two questions were, what were you taught about work growing up? And what have you come to believe about work where you are now in your life? Growing up, I was taught, that work is, who you are. Work is what tells people about you. Work is your source of safety. Work is your source of security. Work is your source of credibility. Um, which basically ended up translated into work is your source of validation and identity. I arrived at a point in my life where work is an expression of who I am, but it doesn't define me. Work is something that I do. Work is not who I am. The key thing that I learned there, and is part of my healing, many people equate work with job, and we use these words interchangeably. And I learned that in order for me to feel fulfilled and inspired, I need to have a wider, broader work than just my job. And hence I increased my exposure to pro bono projects, being part of communities, teaching, public speaking. And I will plead guilty to making that mistake at some point in my life. I wanted my partner, I wanted my job to be my everything at full intensity all the time. And that's just not possible.
In our storms, we often have more toxic beliefs about ourselves than the generous ones. So did Minola.
So one of the most toxic beliefs was this: I have to justify myself. I have to prove myself. I have to constantly earn and keep trust. Somehow I became comfortable with not being, everybody's cup of tea. And somehow I became comfortable with making choices that didn't seem right for most people. So I think the generous belief was that not only I can, but I have to do things my way. And my way doesn't have to make sense to anyone else but myself. Of course, being mindful and intentional about my way, not harming other people. But I don't have to justify my way.
As we attempt to navigate out of the storm, we end up in quicksand, where instead of moving forward, we sink in deeper.
The recurrent quicksand moments were those when I thought that I had to do this on my own because of several reasons. Sometimes because I felt that the help that I was getting was not helping me. A lot of prompts of, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. Again, a lot of doing. Every now and again, I felt triggered, like I almost had to justify my feeling miserable and my need to consume that feeling until it had no power over me. And because I was getting help that was not helping, I thought, okay, I have to do this on my own.
I asked Minola, what made you not give up?
I was very tempted to say hope, but I think there were a couple of moments that I call those were the moments when I discovered that rock bottom has a basement. You reach some moments and you say it cannot get any worse. Like this is the lowest of the low. And then something happens and proves you wrong. I think I was just stubborn. I've had this streak of stubbornness ever since I was very, very little. I think it was a combination of hope and stubbornness, just that I will not give up. I have no idea how I'm going to do it, but I will just not give up.
We then discussed what was helpful and what was less helpful. Now, she says something that every coach, including myself, on this planet needs to hear. So listen up.
What was very helpful for me was being blessed with very few people in my life who were comfortable enough with who they were, and they didn't need validation through the help that they would give others. And what I mean is I had people that I could say to, just I want to walk next to someone, not being alone, but not having to talk. I oftentimes say that I lost a few friends to coaching because they discovered coaching and coaching became their whole identity, and they lost their ability to sit with me or to sit with anyone going through some difficult stuff and not going into coaching mode. And I told a few of them, look, I don't need a coach. I need my friend.
And then came the breakthrough, unexpectedly, powered by the most raw vulnerability within her and someone who hugged her story without judgment.
One breakthrough moment that really, really stands out is a conversation I had with a colleague of mine from back in college. And I remember I looked her up on social media and we met. And again, we hadn't been in touch for 20 years. And we were never close. And we talked for 15 hours. A lot of gratitude goes out to that person for really sitting with my story with no judgment. If there's anything that I could recommend people listening is find that judgment-free space that will just hug your story.
I asked Minola, what do you know now about recovery that you didn't know when you were in the midst of your storm?
For me, the biggest thing that I had to actually unlearn and relearn was that healing is equally about grace as it is about grit. And I come from a family, from a culture, from even a generation where it was all about soldiering through and going through stuff, and it was all about the doing part of healing. My journey taught me that it's very important to pay attention to the being part of healing, and that doing could be or could become like a toxic coping mechanism. And it took a lot of grace for me to understand that the secret is not always to do something about it. The secret sometimes is to just sit in it and be in it and maybe let life unfold a little bit around you, and see who you have become.
Then I asked, if your recovery would be a book, what would be the title of it and what would be the cover picture?
The title of the healing book would be The Big Magic in Small Moments. I used to smile quite ironically when I heard people say that, you will feel when things changed. And I thought that that would be something, almost like with fireworks. But I found that healing happens in small moments that you almost don't pay attention to. And there's nothing fireworksy about it. So there's this amazing quote comes from Muhammad Ali, from the boxer. He said that it's not the mountain ahead you need to climb that wears you down. It's the pebble in your shoe. Maybe the image will be that of someone hiking and stopping to take out a pebble from their shoe. I do believe that what really wears us down is not necessarily the big bang, and the big upheaval, but this constant one small thing on top of another. That is what really wears us down. One of my lessons was to stop and take out the pebbles in my shoes. And sometimes those pebbles are the beliefs, oftentimes the limiting beliefs of my parents, my friends, meaningful people in my life, but those are not my pebble to carry.
After looking back, I always look forward and asked Minola, how would the cover of the next book or chapter in her life be called and look like?
I will try to express it elegantly, but in my head it sounded like Samuel L. Jackson. Just leave the hell out of it. Just live it to the fullest and live it unapologetically and unjustifiably you. So there's a chapter in the book that stands for What Drinking Prosecco Teaches Me About Change Management. I think the visual for just leave the hell out of it is something, like a flute with a bubbly drink, because there's something happy about it. There's something almost dancing like about it. And I believe we need more bubbles in our lives. Bubbles are meaningful conversations, meaningful connections. Just leave the hell out of it.
I cannot thank Minola enough for her braveness and vulnerability to look back and share her story as a lighthouse bringing hope and inspiration for those in their storm today. Before we finished our conversation, she had one more message to leave us with. Thank you, Minola. You are just incredible.
One of the things that I would love to leave with whomever is listening to this, I don't believe in living in the past, but there's one infinite value in looking over your shoulder. And that is to really understand that you have a 100% successful track record in surviving things that while you went through them, you thought that you would never make it. Yeah. Thank you very much, Zora. I appreciate this, and a judgment-free hug to everyone listening.